Kiri's introduction in Avatar 2 may have come within the first few minutes of the movie, but the ambiguity surrounding how she was conceived might hint at a tragic ending for her character in the upcoming sequels. Kiri was shown to be a strong-spirited child in the movie, and if her role in Avatar 2 was any indication, her character development is clearly going to be progressing fast throughout the next movies, and her seemingly immaculate conception suggests that Kiri's connection with Eywa not only runs deep, but the mystery surrounding who her father is may point to a tragic ending, similar to that of a story that most people already know of. Kiri's birth may seem like a mystery at first glance, but once a few factors about Grace's death are taken into account, the picture becomes much clearer, and specific scenes from Avatar 2 point toward a pivotal moment in the future of the Avatar franchise that will likely end in tragedy for the young girl. After flocking to the theater with the masses to see the long-awaited sequel, it wasn't long before viewers began breaking down Kiri's birth, and theories about its significance began appearing online. Throughout the course of Avatar 2, it was discovered that following Grace's death, Jake Sully and the other scientists left on Pandora took her Na'vi avatar and placed it in a stasis chamber, where they kept it safe and monitored it. However, things became a bit more mysterious when they discovered that Grace's avatar was suddenly pregnant, even though there was no indication of her being pregnant at the time of death. This is where Kiri came in, when Grace's lifeless avatar gave birth to a little girl whose mother wasn't technically alive anymore, and who technically didn't have a biological father. And after watching how Kiri acted throughout the rest of the movie, it's easy to theorize about what the future holds for her, especially when the circumstances around Grace's death in the first movie were taken into account, specifically what she said to Jake right before she died. Throughout the entire first movie, Grace showed that she respected the Na'vi goddess Eywa and was fascinated by the flora and fauna that inhabited the planet. And at the end of the movie, when she died, the Na'vi prayed for her to be given another chance at life. It was then that Grace looked at Jake and said, "I'm with her, Jake. She's real," indicating that in death, Grace was in the presence of Eywa before her consciousness faded toward the light. And according to this theory, when she rejoined Eywa through death, something different happened to her consciousness. Rather than returning to her avatar body, it stayed with Eywa, while her physical avatar body stayed alive without a consciousness. And from there, Eywa used Grace's physical avatar body as a vessel. Instead of Eywa bringing Grace's consciousness back to life, she used Grace's avatar body and her consciousness as the connecting factor to impregnate the physical avatar body with a child to be born in the image of both Na'vi and humans. Now, in Avatar 2, it's joked that Kiri's father was one of the scientists who was in charge of keeping Grace's avatar body in stasis. They specifically joke about Norm being Kiri's dad, considering the strong connection that he had with Grace in the first movie. And though that would explain why Kiri seemed to have more human-like features, it wouldn't explain why he didn't just raise Kiri. Jake wouldn't have taken her in as his daughter if she already had a father. On top of that, there was no indication in the first Avatar that even hinted at Grace being pregnant at the time of her death. No, instead, her conception came after she died, when Grace's consciousness and her avatar were both deeply connected to Eywa. And the theory is that James Cameron used Kiri's birth to hint at a much deeper connection with the one that is Eywa, and a much more important yet tragic future for Kiri. This isn't to say that Kiri didn't question who her father was, but what happened to her when she asked is theorized to point to a stronger connection to Eywa as well. In Avatar 2, Kiri first saw her mother's avatar floating in the stasis chamber, and the connection between the two was clear. Kiri then began listening to Grace's old video logs from when she conducted research on Pandora, and then when Kiri finally asked about her father, she, strangely enough, started to seize. And fans of the movie have begun to theorize that this was Eywa letting Kiri know that she didn't technically have a father. And even though it hasn't been revealed yet, if this theory proves true, the other half of Kiri's DNA is going to make her a key factor in the next 3 movies. It all comes down to the connection that Kiri had with Eywa and Pandora. Throughout the entire movie, Kiri had been trying to explain to Jake that she could feel the presence of Eywa around her. She showed that she had a special bond with the plants and animals, and at times during the movie, she was able to control the environment around her. In one scene, she even managed to draw all of the sacred wood sprites in the area to herself, and in another scene, the grass moved in sequence with Kiri's breathing as she slept on it. All of that only seemed to strengthen the connection that Kiri felt with Eywa, a connection that only one other character showed in the first 2 movies, which was her mother Grace, who claimed to be with Eywa as she was dying. According to the theory, Kiri's connection with Eywa comes from the basis that she was created as the embodiment of the goddess herself, leaving Grace's avatar in a sort of Virgin Mary situation. This is entirely possible when you consider that Eywa is an all-knowing being. The theory suggests that Eywa sensed Grace's presence entering her cycle of reincarnation during the transference ceremony, and instead of simply bringing her back to life as the Na'vi prayed for, Eywa used her avatar to bring new life into the world. This life, Kiri, was half of Grace's DNA and half of Eywa, which is why she seems so connected with the goddess in nature around her. In Avatar 2, Kiri always showed a very spiritual side of her that seemed to be able to tap into the world, whether it was in the land that she grew up on or when her clan began to merge with Metcalfe. No matter what environment environment she was in, Kiri was able to connect to it, and that's because she was the embodiment of the life force that flowed through everything on Pandora. She was Eywa, walking around in a Na'vi body, at least according to the theory. Now, Jake's role in Kiri's life becomes much more interesting when put into the perspective of the theory. Since Kiri was supposedly the result of an immaculate conception, and Jake became her adopted father, he practically stepped into the role of Joseph. This isn't to say that Avatar 2 has any religious inclinations, or that it's supposed to be a take on Catholicism, but movies have always taken old religious stories and used them as inspiration for characters, scenes, or story arcs. And after taking this theory into account, and considering the fact that Kiri could be the potential embodiment of Eywa, the Na'vi god, and a human, aka Grace, it's hard not to see a connection to Jesus' story in the Bible. Now, even though Kiri's potential connection with the story of Jesus likely won't have any religious implications, it's a great indicator of where James Cameron could go with her story in the future of the Avatar franchise. In the Bible, it was written that Jesus was supposedly both the Son of God and the embodiment of God at the same time, and in order to save humanity from their sins, Jesus had to give his life on the cross. This premise could easily find itself within Kiri's story. James Cameron already showed us how far Kiri would go to save her family and the rest of her people, but he also showed us that her connection to the world around them extended beyond her family. Like in that scene when she was able to bond with the Elu, while the rest of her family struggled to form that bond and mount them. Kiri did it with seemingly no effort at all. Kiri also proved to be the most open-minded out of her siblings, as she was not only the most accepting of Spider in their family, but she also seemed to speak to Jake on a more human level than any other Na'vi, if that makes sense. This is another way that Kiri was similar to the Catholic Messiah. She seemed to be willing to forgive, and saw that there was more to the world than tribal boundaries and racial differences. And like Jesus in the Bible, this theory suggests that Kiri is going to sacrifice herself in a future movie. Though it's not clear exactly how, it would make sense for Kiri's character to become a figure for both humans and Na'vi to look up to, and in her death, she would become a martyr, possibly even showing the humans and the Na'vi that their only option for peace in life would be to begin working together. After all, the entire reason the humans were invading Pandora in the first place was in search of a resource that could potentially save mankind. We learned from the first movie that the quality of living on Earth had diminished considerably, so perhaps all it would take is for someone who is connected to Eywa, the Na'vi, and the humans to bridge that gap. And there would be no one better to do that than the daughter of a human's avatar like Kiri. According to the theory, she was created in the image of both species, and that could be viewed as a symbol of the humans and Na'vi coming together. Kiri sacrificing herself to save Pandora wouldn't be all bad though, because if her character was influenced by the story of Jesus, then there is a good chance that she would be resurrected. And we know that would be entirely possible, considering the fact that in Avatar 2, we learned that a person's memories could be stored and uploaded into an avatar or clone that would then take on the identity of the person to whom the memories belonged. That opens up the door for Kiri to potentially come back to life, once again as a peace symbol, using the human's own cloning/resurrection tech against them. No matter how you look at it though, Kiri's connections with Eywa and the fact that she didn't have a father are strongly indicative of the Bible's telling of Jesus. Do you think that could be any hint at what we will see in Avatar 3, the Seed Bearer? Make sure you let us know in the comments down below.